Ang Pilipinas ngayon. Narito na ang pinakamainit na mga balita na nakalap sa bawat sulok ng bansa. Ihahatid sa bawat Pilipino saan man kayo sa mundo. Ang Pilipinas ngayon. Pakinggan ang bawat kaganapan sa bawat lalawigan. Ito ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Magandang araw po sa ating mga tagapakinig. Welcome po ulit sa ating programang Ang Pilipinas Ngayon. Ito pong muli ang inyong lingkod, Steph Vicente. Samahan niyo po ako sa kabuuan ng ating palatuntunan. Tulad po ng dati, mapapakinggan po ang ulat ng ating mga kapatid na himpilan sa probinsya, ang ating mga segmentong balitang negosyo at kalakalan, balitang esports at balitang artista, maging ang ilan sa mga pangunahing balita mula naman dito sa ating bansa. Yan po sa kabuuan ng ating palatuntunan, ang Pilipinas Ngayon.
Mga kaganapan sa Kamaynilaan at mga kalapit na lalawigan dito sa Ang Pilipinas Ngayon.
Sa mahalagang balita, Local Government Support Fund o LGSF tiniyak ng Malacanang na may malinaw na panuntunang dapat sundin upang masigurong magiging masinop ang paggugol dito. Ang detalye ng balita ihahatid sa atin ni Alvin Baltazar.
Binigyan din ni Executive Secretary Ralph Recto na hindi isang blankong cheque ang LGSF na basta-basta na lamang ang gagawing paggamit. Ayon kay Recto, may tuntuning dapat nasundin sa gagawing paggugol dito ng mga lokal na pamahalaan sa gitna ng paninigurong daraan sa transparency at accountability ang bawat pisong galing sa LGSF. Nilinaw naman ni Recto na ang ipatutupad na mga panuntunan ay hindi naglalayong maghigpit kundi para tiyakin lamang na makapaghahatid ng makapanlipunang benepisyo ang LGSF sa mga tao. Ang LGSF ayon sa Executive Secretary ay bahagi ng kanilang tipan sa mga Pilipino at ito ay ang matiyak na ang kanilang binabayad na buwis ay babalik sa kanila sa pamamagitan ng mahusay, maaasahan at dekalidad na mga serbisyong pampubliko. Mensahe pa ni Recto sa mga LGU, ihatid ang kailangang serbisyo ng walang pagkaantala, gugulin ang pondo ng may disiplina, magtayo ng may integridad at tiyaking mararamdaman ng mga Pilipino ang pinagkakaloob na serbisyo sa kanila. Pakinggan natin si Executive Secretary Ralph Recto.
Clear rules are in place to ensure that every peso is spent with transparency and accountability and aligned with our national priorities.
Mula sa Palasyo ng Malacanang para sa Bagong Pilipinas, Alvin Baltazar, Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko.
Kumpleto, detalyadong balitaan, di papahuli sa mahahalagang kaganapan. Kamustahin ang inang bayan, ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Samantala, ilang mga alkalde ang nagpaabot ng pasalamat kay Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. kasunod ng inisyatiba nitong mapagkalooban ang mga local government unit ng mas mataas na Local Government Special Fund o LGSF na maaaring magamit sa kanilang infrastructure project at social programs. Labis ang naging pasalamat ni San Juan City Mayor Francis Zamora sa inilunsad na LGSF ni Pangulong Marcos na aniyay napakalaking tulong sa pagpapatuloy ng mga programa ng mga lungsod. Sa bisa kasi ng nasabing kautusan ng Pangulo ay mayroong malinaw ng guidelines ang ilalabas na pondo sa ilalim ng Local Government Support Fund.
Ako magpasalamat sa ating mahal na Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. sapagkat for the first time ang LGUs po ay matadownloadan na ng LGSF para po sa mga infrastructure projects at kundi para sa mga social programs po namin. Dati po ay walang masyadong malinaw na guidelines sa totoo lang when it comes to LGSF.
San Juan City Mayor Francis Zamora.
Pasada ng mga balita mula sa Pilipinas para sa mga Pilipino saan man sa mundo. Ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Sa kaunay na ulat, pinapurihan naman ni Manila Mayor Isko Moreno ang napaka-agresibong aksyon ni Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. upang lalo pang makatulong sa mga lokal na pamahalaan. Aniyay makakaasa ang Pangulo na positibong magbubunga ang mga inisyatiba niyang ito sa ilalim ng Local Government Support Fund.
For so long, yung aggressiveness ni President Bongbong Marcos to help local government units across the country, because this will not happen only in Metro Manila or highly urbanized city, even in municipality, I think will bear fruit later on.
Manila Mayor Isko Moreno.
Pasada ng mga balita mula sa Pilipinas para sa mga Pilipino saan man sa mundo. Ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Sa iba pang mga balita, tinawag naman ni League of Provinces of the Philippines o LPP President at South Cotabato Governor Reynaldo Tamayo Jr. na game changer ang Expanded Local Government Support Fund o LGSF. Ani Tamayo, sa tulong kasi nito ay mabibigyan ng panibagong mapagkukunan ng pondo ang mga lokalidad upang matulungan pa ang kanilang mga nasasakupan hindi lamang sa pamahagi ng bigas kundi upang mapondohan ang iba pang high impact projects.
Kagandahan kasi nito ay tinitingnan kung ano talaga yung pwedeng maibigay ng national government sa mga local government units natin. Ito ay napakagandang programa na naging katuwang na talaga ng mga local government units at national government natin. Dahil doon ay dependent naman tayo sa national salutment. Ngayon iba na. Pero talaga pinamaba ay national government na. Dinidecentralize na nila yung funds papunta sa mga local government units.
LPP President at South Cotabato Governor Reynaldo Tamayo Jr.
Kumpleto, detalyadong balitaan, di papahuli sa mahahalagang kaganapan. Kamustahin ang inang bayan, ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Samantala, lahat ng Pilipino dapat maging kabalikat ng pamahalaan sa pagpapaunlad sa bawat komunidad ng Pilipinas. Ito ay ayon kay Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. Ang kabang ulat ihahatid sa atin ni Raquel Bayan.
Hinihikayat ni Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr. ang lahat ng mga Pilipino na maging kabalikat ng pamahalaan sa pagsusulong ng isang mas maunlad, mas progresibo at mas makatarungang lipunan para sa lahat ng Pilipino. Nanawagan rin ang Pangulo sa mga lokal na opisyal na ipagpatuloy ang pagpapakita ng diwa ng paglilingkod sa bayan, ang pagkakaisa at koordinasyon, ang kanilang kakayahan, integridad at malasakit sa bayan. Sabi ng Pangulo, malaki ang maitutulong ng bawat Pilipino sa pagbabantay sa kanilang mga komunidad upang masiguro na ang bawat proyekto at bawat pondo ng taong bayan mapakikinabangan ng bawat mamamayan ng Pilipinas. Pakiusap ni Pangulo Marcos, sama-sama ang mga Pilipino sa pagsusulong ng isang bagong Pilipinas na mas handa sa pagharap sa mga hamon, mas bukas sa mga oportunidad at mas maunlad para sa susunod pang henerasyon.
Sama-samang pagsisikap para sa mas progresibo, mas maunlad at mas makatarungang lipunan. Hinihikayat ko ang lahat na makilahot upang ang mga proyekto sa inyong komunidad at maging katuwang ng pamahalaan sa pagtiyak na ang pondo ay napapakinabangan ng bawat mamamayan. Sama-sama nating itatag ang bagong Pilipinas na mas handa sa hamon, mas bukas sa oportunidad, mas maunlad para sa mga susunod na henerasyon.
Mula sa Malacanang para sa Bagong Pilipinas, Raquel Bayan ng Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko.
Pasada ng mga balita mula sa Pilipinas para sa mga Pilipino saan man sa mundo. Ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Sa iba pang mga ulat, mga lokal na pamahalaan hinikayat ng Department of Education na magtayo ng learning continuity spaces na magagamit sa panahon ng emergency at sakuna. Ang detalye ng balita ihahatid naman sa atin ni J. Mark Dagala.
Hinikayat ng Department of Education ng mga lokal na pamahalaan na magpatayo rin ng mga tinatawag na learning continuity spaces sa kanilang nasasakupan. Ito ayon kay Education Secretary Sani Angara ay para may magamit pa ring lugar ng pagkatuto ang mga mag-aaral habang itinatayo ang mga silid-aralan o kahit sa panahon ng emergency o sakuna. Ginawa ng kalihim ang pahayag makaraang sa ilyuhan ng DepEd at ang iba't ibang pamahalaang lungsod ang isang kasunduan para pabilisin ang pagtatayo ng mga silid-aralan. Sa ilalim ng kasunduan, nangako ang mga city government na pabibilisin ang pag-aproba ng mga permit, tukuyin kung may mga paaralan na dapat unahin at tumulong sa pagpapatayo ng mga ligtas at makabagong silid-aralan sa kanilang lugar. Dahil dito, ani Angara, mabibigyan kapangyarihan ang mga lokalidad sa bansa na makatulong sa pagpapatayo ng mga silid-aralan, mabawasan ang siksikan sa mga paaralan, matiyak na may maayos at angkop na espasyo para sa pagtuturo at pagkatuto. Para sa Bagong Pilipinas, J. Mark Tagala, Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko.
Pasada ng mga balita mula sa Pilipinas para sa mga Pilipino saan man sa mundo. Ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Samantala, idiniin ng International Criminal Court o ICC na si dating Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte ay mayroong direktang kontrol at nagbigay ng suportang pinansyal sa malawakang patayan sa ilalim ng kanyang anti-narcotics campaign. Sa isinagawang confirmation of charges hearing nitong Lunes na hindi dinaluhan ni Duterte, ipinunto ni ICC Prosecutor Mame Mandiaye Niang na pinupondohan at personal na tinutukoy ng dating Pangulo ang mga target ng Davao Death Squad o DDS. Ayon kay Niang, mahalaga ang kontribusyon ni Duterte para ma-neutralize ang mga kriminal sa Pilipinas sa pamamagitan ng pagpatay. Binigyang diin ng prosecutor na bukod sa regular salary, nakatatanggap din umano ng cash per head ang mga direktang salarin na sumusunod sa utos dahil sa takot, pabuya o bulag na katapatan.
It is also a reminder that those in power are not above the law. Your Honors, over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, I will provide an overview of the evidence in this case that demonstrates that Mr. Duterte is responsible for the charged crimes.
ICC Prosecutor Mame Mandiaye Niang.
Kumpleto, detalyadong balitaan, di papahuli sa mahahalagang kaganapan. Kamustahin ang inang bayan, ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Sa iba pang mga ulat, mariin namang kinondena ng palasyo ang pahayag ng abogado ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte na si Attorney Nicholas Kaufman na sinisiraan lamang ni Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. ang panunungkulan ni Duterte. Sa unang araw ng confirmation of charges sa International Criminal Court o ICC, sinabi ni Attorney Kaufman na mayroong isang tawag sa telepono itong natanggap at ipinagmalaki na maglalabas sila ng mga witness para siraan ang dating Pangulo. Ayon kay Palas Press Officer at Communications Undersecretary Attorney Claire Castro na ang aligasyong ito ni Kaufman kay Pangulong Marcos ay maituturing na kalokohan. Dagdag pa ni Yusek Castro na tila si Attorney Kaufman ngayon ang may karamdaman at hindi ang kliyente nitong si Duterte dahil nakakalimutan nito na ang crime against humanity case na inihain sa ICC laban sa dating Pangulo ay noong 2017 pa kung saan isa pa lamang private citizen si Pangulong Marcos.
Pasada ng mga balita mula sa Pilipinas para sa mga Pilipino saan man sa mundo. Ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Samantala, pinabulaan na naman ni House Deputy Speaker Paulo Ortega na mayroong basbas ni dating House Speaker Martin Romualdez ang inendorso niyang ika-4 na impeachment complaint laban kay Vice President Sara Duterte. Ayon kay Ortega, sarili niyang desisyon ang pagsuporta sa reklamo dahil nakita niyang matibay ang basehan nito base na rin sa mga naging talakayan sa mga komite noong nakaraang Kongreso. Tugon ito ng House Leader matapos palutangin ni Navotas Representative Toby Tiangco na may kumpas ni Romualdez ang 4th impeachment complaint. Nilinaw din ng mambabatas na walang kinalaman ang liderato ng Kamara maging si House Speaker Faustino Boji D. III sa naturang hakbang. Pinaalalahanan naman ni Ortega ang kanyang mga kasamahan na bagamat lahat sila ay political animals, dapat pa ring busisiin ang bawat artikulo ng impeachment base sa merito at katotohanan.
As far as I know, the former speaker is concentrating on his district.
So walang bastos?
Wala. Kilala nyo naman ako, kilala nyo naman ang pinagdaanan natin ng 19th Congress as part of the Quadcom, as part of the Blue, as part of the Goodco. So, hindi na po siguro kailangan tanongin kung bakit in-endorse ako 4th impeachment.
Si House Deputy Speaker Paulo Ortega.
Kumpleto, detalyadong balitaan, di papahuli sa mahahalagang kaganapan. Kamustahin ang inang bayan, ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Sa iba pang mga ulat, QCLGU, pinaalalahanan ang mga motorista sa road closure at zipper lane na ipatutupad sa Trillion Peso March Part 3. Ang kabuang ulat ihahatid naman sa atin ni Mary Ann Bastasa.
Muling nagpaalala ang Quezon City Local Government sa mga motorista kaugnay ng posibleng epekto sa trapiko na isasagawang Trillion Peso March 3 bukas, February 25 kasabay ng anibersaryo ng EDSA People Power. Ayon sa pamahalaang lungsod, asahan ng mabigat na daloy ng mga sasakyan sa paligid ng EDSA People Power Monument simula alas 8 pa lang ng umaga kabilang EDSA, Katipunan Avenue, Ortigas Avenue, White Plains Avenue at Temple Drive. Magpapatupad ng zipper lane sa White Plains Avenue sa pagitan ng EDSA at Katipunan simula naman mamayang alas 9 ng gabi hanggang alas 6 ng umaga ng February 25. Pansamantala ring isasara ang White Plains Avenue sa araw ng aktibidad simula alas 6 ng umaga. Mananatili namang nakaantabay ang mga tauhan ng Traffic and Transport Management Department, ang Department of Public Order and Safety Task Force Disiplina, QCPD at MNDA para umalalay sa trapiko sa naturang araw. Mula sa Quezon City para sa Bagong Pilipinas, Mera Bastasa, Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko.
Pasada ng mga balita mula sa Pilipinas para sa mga Pilipino saan man sa mundo. Ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Samantala, bagong talagang NBI Director Attorney Melvin Matibag tiniyak na walang sasantuhin sa isinagawang investigasyon sa flood control projects. Ang detalye ng balita ihahatid naman sa atin ni AJ Ignacio.
Tiniyak ni National Bureau of Investigation Chief Attorney Melvin Matibag na wala itong sasantuin sa mga masasangkot na individual sa investigasyon sa flood control projects. Aniya, kahit pa maging ang kanyang mga kaalyado at kaibigan ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte ay kanyang pananagutin kapag merong sapat na ebidensya. Git pa ni Direktor Matibag, ito'y trabaho lamang kaya dapat manaig at isinasaad ng batas at huliin ang sino man lumabag at nagkasala rito. Samantala, ipagpapatuloy naman niya ang naumpisang task force ng NBI na itinatag 5 buwan matapos nitong dating panunungkulan ni Attorney Angelito Magno hinggil sa pag-iimbestiga sa flood control projects. Mula pa rin dito sa NBI, para sa Bagong Pilipinas, AJ Ignacio, Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko.
Kumpleto, detalyadong balitaan, di papahuli sa mahahalagang kaganapan. Kamustahin ang inang bayan, ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Sa iba pang mga ulat, resolusyon ng Senado kontra sa public statements ng Chinese embassy officials kinilala ni Chinese Ambassador Jing Quan, ayon yan kay Senador Erwin Tulfo. Ang kabuang ulat ihahatid sa atin ni Nympha Asuncion.
Binahagi ni Senate Committee on Foreign Relations Chairman Senator Erwin Tulfo na kinikilala ng Chinese Embassy ang karapatan ng Senado na magpasa ng resolusyon na kumukundina sa mga naging public statements ng ilang opisyal ng Chinese Embassy. Ayon kay Senator Erwin, sa naging pakikipagpulong niya kay Chinese Ambassador to the Philippines Jing Guan, sinabi nitong walang magagawang embahada sa Senate Resolution 256 dahil karapatan ito ng mataas sa kapulungan. Una nang sinabi ni Tulfo na naging produktibo ang kanilang meeting ni Jing kahapon kung saan nagkasundo silang magkaroon ng malinaw at bukas sa komunikasyon sa halip na magbatuhan ng public statements. Binahagi rin ng senador ang posibilidad na masundan ng meeting kay Ambassador Jing ng kasama ang iba pang mga senador matapos na may mag-raise nito sa All Senators Caucus kahapon. Kasama rin anya sa mga napag-usapan nila ni Jing ang tungkol kay Philippine Coast Guard o PCG spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tariela. Ayon kay Senator Erwin, pinaliwanag niyang nasa ilalim ng ehekutibo si Tariela, isang hiwalay na sangay ng gobyerno mula sa kanila sa lehislatura. Pinunto rin anya ng mambabatas ang demokrasya at freedom of speech sa Pilipinas. Mula Senado para sa Bagong Pilipinas, Ninfa Asuncion, Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko.
Pasada ng mga balita mula sa Pilipinas para sa mga Pilipino saan man sa mundo. Ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Samantala, isa na namang Chinese national na may apelidong Guo arestado ng Bureau of Immigration o BI dahil sa pagpapanggap bilang isang Pinoy. Ang detalye ng balita ihahatid naman sa atin ni Lawrence Tanhoco.
Inaresto ng Bureau of Immigration ang isang Chinese national na umano'y nagpapanggap na Pilipino sa Panglao, Bohol. Sa ulat kay Bureau of Immigration Commissioner Joel Anthony Viado, sinabi ni BI Fugitive Search Unit Chief Rendell Ryan C. na isinagawa ang operasyon noong February 17 sa Alona Beach Road, Barangay Tawala. Kinilala ang inarestong si Guo Jinjin, 48 anyos, na nahuli sa koordinasyon ng BI Intelligence Division at iba pang ahensya ng pamahalaan bilang bahagi ng kampanya laban sa mga ilegal na dayuhan alinsunod na rin sa direktiba ni Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. Batay sa impormasyon ng BI, umano'y nag-ooperate si Guo sa ilang negosyo sa Panala o sa Panglao gamit ang mga Pinoy nominees upang makaiwas sa mga limitasyon sa pagmamayari ng negosyo ng mga dayuhan. Nadiscover rin ng mga otoridad na may hawak itong professional driver's license mula sa LTO at nagtatakda ng sa kanya bilang Pinoy kahit na kumpirmado sa immigration records na siya ay Chinese national. Ayon sa BI, huli siyang pumasok sa bansa noong 2018 gamit ang Special Resident Retirees Visa at walang nakatalang derogatory record, ngunit may lisensya na balido hanggang 2032 na may indikasyong Pilipino ang kanyang pagkamamamayan. Posibleng may naisumiting maling dokumento upang makakuha ng government-issued identification ang nasabing niya individual. Kasalukuyan namang nakakulong si Guo sa BI Holding Facility habang kinakaharap ang kasong deportasyon. Mula pa rin dito sa lungsod ng Maynila para sa Bagong Pilipinas, Lawrence Tanhoco ng Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko.
Pasada ng mga balita mula sa Pilipinas para sa mga Pilipino saan man sa mundo. Ang Pilipinas ngayon.
Sa iba pang mga ulat, investigasyon sa Rodriguez dump site at pansamantalang pagsasara nito isinusulong ng isang mambabatas kasunod ng naganap na landslide doon. Ang kabuuan ihahatid sa atin ni Kathleen Forbes.
Nanawagan si Senior Deputy Minority Leader Edgar Erice ng isang congressional investigation at pansamantalang pagpapasara sa Rodriguez dump site matapos sa malagim na landslide na umano'y naglibing sa 12 ng katao. Sa kanyang privilege speech, inilahad ni Erice ang seryosong pangamba sa epekto ng naturang pasilidad sa kalikasan, kaligtasan ng publiko at paggamit ng pondo ng bayan. Tinukoy niya sa deliberasyon ng 2026 General Appropriations Bill ay kinwisto na niya yung MMDA at DENR hinggil sa environmental impact at sustainability ng dump site. Nakakaapekto kasi anya ito sa mga daluyan ng tubig malapit sa lugar, pati na sa Laguna de Bay, gayon din doon sa kalapit na Balara Water Reservoir. Posible rin anya na merong conflict of interest ang mga kontraktor ng dump site at garbage hauling services at sinasabing posibleng merong pang 20 hanggang 30% na padding sa billing. Kaya naman nanawagan siya sa DSWD pati na rin sa DOLE at DENR at National Bureau of Investigation na magbigay ng tulong at siyasatin yung sinasabing pananakot sa mga residente at waste pickers upang hindi na magsalita sa insidente. Para sa Bagong Pilipinas, Kathleen Forbes, Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko.
Kumpleto, detalyadong balitaan, di papahuli sa mahahalagang kaganapan. Kamustahin ang inang bayan, ang Pilipinas ngayon.
At iyan ang mga maiinit na kaganapan para sa araw na ito. Samantala, habang hinihintay natin ang ating makakapanayam para sa edisyong ito ng Ang Pilipinas Ngayon, ay dadakuin muna natin ang ating mga kapatid na himpilan sa probinsya para sa bugso ng ating regional news sa pagbabalik ng Ang Pilipinas Ngayon makalipas lamang po ang ilang mga paalala.
This is a public service announcement.
Discipline is the key. Umiwas sa aksidente sa daan. Ang pagmamaneho ay may kaakibat na responsibilidad, hindi basta mapaandar lang ang sasakyan. Kilatisin ang sarili, ang kahandaan sa manibela, siguruhing inyong konsentrasyon ay hindi magagambala. Importante rin na ating laging isipin, init ng ulo ay huwag pairalin, bagkus kaligtasan ng lahat ang siyang dapat unahin. Isang mahalagang paalala mula sa Presidential Broadcast Service at Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko 738.
This is a public service announcement. Public service announcement from PBS, Presidential Broadcast Service at Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko 738.
Paliwanag mo sa tao na hindi totoo yan.
Dahil ang totoo, yung totoo ang dapat ninyong malaman.
Nagkalat sa internet ang fake news o mali at fake news. Tinatapon niyo yung tao. What they are doing is creating panic.
We say no.
Yung pagkalat ng fake news. And some of it's dangerous.
Sana iwasan po natin pag-spread ng fake news.
At di magpapakalat ng disinformation at misinformation ang kasulukuyang administrasyon.
Stop telling us fake news because you're wrong.
Para sa totoo at mapagkakatiwalaang mga balita at impormasyon, Radyo Pilipinas.
Paano nga ba mag-register para magkaroon ng schedule sa Bagong Pilipinas Presidential Action Center? Narito ang mga dapat gawin. Gamit ang iyong mobile device, pumunta sa eGovPH app. Pwede itong i-download mula sa Apple App Store o sa Google Play Store. Gumawa ng account. Ilagay ang email address, valid mobile number, pagkatapos ay makakatanggap ka ng one-time code sa iyong email. Gamitin ang code sa eGov app para sa verification ng iyong account at ng mga impormasyong ibinigay. Congratulations! Meron ka ng eGovPH app account. Pwede mo na ma-access ang iba't ibang serbisyo ng gobyerno kabilang ang mga serbisyo sa Bagong Pilipinas Presidential Action Center.
Mabilis ang trivia, dagdag talino. Heto na ang Dagling Kaalaman.
Mahilig ka ba sa online at video games?
Legendary!
Narito ang ilan sa mga benepisyong hatid ng online gaming. Ito ay mainam na stress reliever, nagpapahusay sa koordinasyon ng mata at kamay, nagpapahusay ng memorya, konsentrasyon at problem-solving skills. Naituturo rin nito ang kahalagahan ng teamwork at pakikitungo sa kapwa. Pero tandaan, ang lahat ng sobra ay masama, kaya play well and play in moderation.
Kaunting kaalaman na malaking dagdag talino. Abangan muli ang susunod na Dagling Kaalaman.
Na sa ating programang Ang Pilipinas Ngayon at narito na po ang bugso ng ating mga regional news. Dadakuin muna natin ang rehiyon ng Luzon. Pawikan hatcheries sa Ilocos Norte, patuloy ang pagpapakawala sa mga pawikan sa tulong ng ilang pribadong grupo. Ang kabong ulat ihahatid sa atin ni Rani Dorilag mula sa Lawag.
Nai-establisar dagiti sumagmamano nga hatcheries iti pawikan dito Ilocos Norte. Dagiti pagamo ni Miss Venus Angelica Sigawat, ti co-founder iti Dalupinas Oeste Eco Rangers Incorporated wenno doers. Segon kini Miss Sigawat, babaen ti panakisarita na iti maysa nga kameng ti Philippine Coast Guard adda ti hatchery iti pawikan iti ili ti Banggi ken adda pay iti ili ti Curimaw. Naman nga ita nga bulan ti Pebrero ket nakaiparok da ti 120 nga pawikan hatchlings iti Sitio Remedios iti ili ti Curimaw baben iti pawikan project ti Damid Foundation. Nasaludsod dito kaputan nakaiparok at ti Pagasa Pawikan Protection and Conservation Center Hatchery iti Bagak Bataan iti nasurok 1,300 nga olive Ridley Sea turtles. Kunani misigawat ang nagbalin nga atraksyon kadagiti turista ken timulong da anang bulos ken nang bayabay kadagiti pagong mapan iti baybay. Inayo na nga matadon dagiti bulboluntaryo may panggep iti pannakatagiben dagiti pagong agraman dagiti nabiyag iti baybay. Mula Radyo Pilipinas Lawag, ito si Rani Durilag para sa Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Balita mula sa lalawigan sa bawat rehiyon ng ating bayan. Dito sa Ang Pilipinas Ngayon.
Bago tayo magtungo sa ating susunod na regional news, ay tayo ay dadako na sa ating panayam para sa araw na ito dahil pag-uusapan po natin itong tinatawag na blockchain technology. So para sa mga hindi nakakaalam, ano nga ba ito? Kaya naman para magkaroon tayo ng isang malalimang talakayan kaugnay ng naturang paksa ay makakasama natin ang Undersecretary for E-Government mula sa Department of Information and Communications Technology, walang iba kundi si Yusek David Almirol Jr. Yusek Almirol, welcome po sa Ang Pilipinas Ngayon. Si Steph Vicente po ito ng Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Magandang hapon, Steph, at magandang hapon sa mga nakikinig sa atin ngayon.
Maraming salamat, Yusek, sa pagsama niyo po sa programa para sa araw na ito. So, Yusek, ano po ba itong tinatawag na blockchain technology?
Ang blockchain technology ay isang maganda pong technology na kaya natin pong magkaroon ng transparency po sa lahat ng datos. So the moment po na nilagay natin ang mga datos natin sa blockchain, hindi na po pwedeng burahin ito, hindi rin pwedeng i-alter, hindi pwedeng i-edit, hindi pwedeng i-delete. No? So hindi pwedeng bagu-baguhin yung datos. So ang blockchain po ay isa sa pagparaan natin para sa ating mga datos moving forward ay hindi na po kaya i-tamper ng kahit sino man. Yan po ang key reason po ng ating blockchain technology.
Yusek, paano naman po ba ito ginagamit sa pamamahala o governance?
So, ang plano ho natin, gamitin ang blockchain po para sa ating budget, no? So, dapat po ang budget na binibigay ng gobyerno, ito po ay taxpayers' money. So, gamit po ng blockchain, pwede na pong bantayan kung saan napupunta po talaga na proyekto at nagiging successful ba yung proyekto na yan, kanino ba yan na-award, kanino ba yan binigay, or kanino ba yan na-implement, or anong ahensya ba yan, at kung sino man ang nag-approve niyan, at pati po yung mga layers po ng history ng project na yan, hindi na pwedeng itago. Kasi nga po, yung data natin ay naka-blockchain na, or nakalagay na po sa hindi pwedeng ma-alter na data.
Pero Yusek, dahil nga kung gagawin nga po itong blockchain na transparent ang 2026 national budget sa mga auditors at sa mga kababayan po natin, sa citizens, paano po ba matitiyak na ito'y ligtas sa international hackers o cyber attacks?
So, ang blockchain po ay tinatawag na tokenized data po, no? So, big sabihin, encrypted po yung data nito pag pumasok sa tinatawag na nodes, no? So, hindi po pwedeng basahin po yung pong information na pumapasok sa token. Ang maganda po dito sa ating blockchain technology, hindi naman po natin i-expose yung mga personal information dito. So, ang i-expose natin ay public data po ito, no? So, wala po siyang mga tinatawag na mga personal information na nagagamit po yan sa mga, halimbawa, yung mga email or pangalan or mobile number. Wala pong ganun muna. Ang uunahin po sa blockchain ay yung pong movement ng pera, no? Kapag pinasok po sa GAA, sa DBM, pag binigay po yung budget sa isang ahensya, at yung ahensya naman po ay nagbigay ng project o inaward sa isang contractor or binayaran na yung contractor or naglagay na ng updates or status ng project na yon, mamomonitor po yan ng taong bayan. So hindi po ito wala pong problema po dyan in terms of hacking kasi talaga pong public data naman po yung ilalabas natin.
At sa pamagitan po nitong blockchain technology, paano po nito babaguhin ang paraan ng Commission on Audit o COA o ng Ombudsman sa pag-iimbestiga sa nawawalang public funds?
Ang nodes po ay kasama po ang COA sa ating pong blockchain. Ibig sabihin, pag pinasok yung data po sa DBM, kita po agad-agad yan halimbawa ng DPWH. Pag pinasok naman po yung data ng DPWH, kita rin po yan ng COA. Kaya hindi na po pwedeng magsinungaling kung yung project na yun po ay completed o hindi. Kasi halimbawa po, pinasok po ng DPWH na itong project na to, completed na ito or 50% or bayad na ito. Kita po yan ng node naman ng COA naman. So pag nag-investigate ang COA, makikita niya agad-agad doon na, hindi pala completed itong project na to. So pag pinasok ni COA yon na uncompleted yon, kita rin po ni DPWH, kita rin po ni DBM yan, kita rin po ni DICT yan. Kaya hindi pwede nang manloko pa. Okay, dahil nga po, pwede na pong magpasok ng sabay-sabay ng datos, pati investigation po yan, kasama pati COA, pati ombudsman, pwedeng i-access na later on, real-time yung mga pinapasok na datos.
Although napaka-technical ng blockchain pag naririnig natin itong term na ito, pero sa madaling sabi, parang transparency portal po pala siya. Nakadesenyo po ba ang portal na ito para sa mga tech experts lamang o simple lang po ba ito na kayang manavigate at maintindihan ng ordinaryong mamamayan, mga estudyante at senior citizens po?
Napaka-technical po ang blockchain talaga. Kaya nga po nagiging viral ito nga sa IT community pinag-uusapan. Pero sa layman's term po or yung pagkaka-explain natin sa taong bayan, dahil po sa blockchain implementation ng gobyernong ito, ma-appreciate natin kasi in the future, mahihirapan na po na magsinungaling. Mahihirapan na rin po na pwedeng i-alter or bago-baguhin ng mga datos. So, magiging kampante ang ating mga mamamayan ngayon na talagang yung pera, yung taxpayers' money na binibigay sa gobyerno at papunta sa project at talagang hindi na po napupunta sa mga ghost project or mga tinatawag na yung mga project na hindi kumpleto, tapos binabayaran naman kahit hindi pa kumpleto. So, binibigyan natin ngayon ng tools ang mamamayan na mag-imbestiga at makita kung sino ang may sala at kung sino yung may mali. So, because of the transparency, hindi na pwede ngayon na basta-bastang manloko na yung mga contractors, pati mga agency. So, we're giving power to the people and even to IT community to transparently see yung movement ng pera ng mamamayan.
Sa kasalukuyan, Yusek, parang nagta-transition pa lang po tayo sa blockchain technology. Sa oras na maipatupad ng buo ang 2026 national budget, ilang porsyento po kaya nito ang masasabi na ma-on-chain?
So for the moment po, ang plano po tatlong nodes muna ang i-implement ng DICT. Kasama namin po dito ang DBM, kasama natin po ang COA, saka DICT. And then lahat ng agencies po na ready na pong pwede pong mag-link dito sa chain later on. Uunahin po natin po ang DPWH, which nagkaroon na po ng pilot implementation dyan. Then after ng DPWH, isusunod natin po ang iba-ibang mga agencies. So meron pong timeline ito. Hindi po ito biglaan at kinakailangan pong totoong blockchain po yung i-implement natin. At ang unang-una pong gagawin dyan na kailangan pagmamayari po ng gobyerno po yung mga nodes para yung data natin wala sa ibang bansa. Dapat nasa Pilipinas po yung ating datos.
Yusek, meron po bang mga matatawag na pushback sa bureaucracia hinggil sa pagpapatupad ng blockchain technology at paano po ba natin tutugunan itong mga pushback na ito?
Ang pushback lang naman dito kasi bago ang blockchain In fact, sa buong mundo, nahihirapan din yung ibang bansa na mag-implement ng blockchain kasi nga hindi po ito birong teknolohiya. Meron pong infrastructure ito kailangang i-put up yung data center natin, saan ba ilalagay ang datos, sino bang ahensya ang gagamit. So for the moment, sinisimulan natin po sa pinakasimpleng bagay. Ito po yung iba-blockchain natin, yung movement ng pera at saan napupunta. Yun lang po muna yung uunahin natin. Maraming use case ang step ang blockchain Pero for the moment, ang phase 1 natin ay blockchain the budget muna ang gagawin natin. Para po alam natin na in the future sa Pilipinas, mahirap na pong magtago ng mga datos. Mahirap na pong mag-edit or mag-delete ng kung anong mga record. May ebidensya na, may makakasuhan na at alam natin kung sinong gumawa at alam natin kung anong ahensya at sinong tao yung gumawa ng bagay na yon.
At bago ko po kayo pakawalan, Yusek, ano na lamang po ang inyong mensahe para sa ating mga kababayan na marahil po ay hindi pa masyadong pamilyar dito sa blockchain technology. Go ahead po, Yusek.
napakaliwanag po nung bilin ng ating mahal na Pangulo na siya po ang talagang nagsimula nito na dapat eradicate na natin ang corruption. Alam ko ninyo, ako po very passionate po ako dito sa project na ito dahil mismo ang Pangulo po ang nagsabi na sa DICT, lalo na po sa EGOB, sinabihan kami wala nang tila dapat, wala nang red tape, wala nang corruption. So ang blockchain po ay isa lang tools po ito. Hindi po ito nakakasigurado na 100% na kaya niyang isolbar ang corruption. Pero because of blockchain, bibigyan ngayon ng tools ang mga mamamayan at pati mga IT community na mag-imbestiga na totoo nga na yung pera ng taong bayan ay napupunta po sa tama at hindi po ito kinukurakot o hindi po ito nilulustay lang ng kung sino-sinong mga contractor or mga agencies. So, napakagandang proyekto po ito at maasahan ninyo na habang nag-i-implement po kami ay magkakaroon po kayo ng talagang actual na experience na hindi na pwedeng basta lang na manobrain yung budget po ng gobyerno. Kasi at the end of the day po, taxpayers' money po ito, protektahan po natin ang pera ng mamamayan na dapat mapupunta po ito sa totoong proyekto talaga na may experience at may enjoy po ng ating mga mamamayan.
And with that, maraming salamat po, Yusek, sa pagsama niyo po dito sa programang Ang Pilipinas Ngayon. Sa ulitin po, God bless po at mabuhay po kayo.
God bless po, magandang hapon.
At ating po nakasama si DICT Undersecretary for E-Government, Yusek David L. Almirol Jr. Patungkol po yan sa blockchain technology. Kanina ay atin na pong napakinggan ang ulat mula sa Lawag na hinatid po sa atin ni Rani Dorilag. Tayo'y dadako naman sa Agoo. La Union Agri-Trade Fair, opisyal nang binuksan. Sariwang ani at masayang selebrasyon matutunghayan. Narito si Albert Kawile para sa balita.
Manik na ti kinagagar ken panagkaykay sa dagiti ka Elio Canos, iti opisyal pa nakalukat ti La Union Agri-Trade Fair. Daytoy nga aktibidad ket paset agtultuloy a selebrasyon ti maikas sa gasot 70 ket na founding anniversary ti probinsya ti La Union. Na dumaduma sektor ti kagimungan ti Dimaray tapno makikadwa iti tinawan a selebrasyon panangipaay iti pamadayaw iti nabaknang a kultura ken agrikultura ti probinsya. Ti sentro ti atraksyon ket tinamari sa parada dagiti naamo kalding anaangay itaglawlaw ti San Fernando City Plaza nga dani ti tema a La Union pinakamekmek. Impakita dagiti kalding tinaduma-duma na maris ken creative costumes ngayon sa gana dagiti nakipaset manipod iti naduma-duma munisipyo ti probinsya. Sinaruno ti parada ti ababa a programa ken ti makapasidaw nga ang pinaka agri-fishery harvest. Si Papa Nakel anang in-display dagiti lokal a manalon ken mangalap kadagiti apit da na itampok ditoy dagiti kaatiddugan kadagsenan ken kadakkelan anateng kenikan nga agserbi a pamanagnag itiya nawadwad nga agrikultura ken panagkalap ti La Union. Dagitoy nga aktibidad ket nalawag anang ipakita iti nawadwad nga apit ken agtultuloy a panagduras ti sektor ti agrikultura ti probinsya makaparigta ken ang tednamnama kadagiti amin at Team Mabuno. Manipod RP Ago, Albert Kawile para ti Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Balita mula sa lalawigan sa bawat rehiyon ng ating bayan. Dito sa Ang Pilipinas Ngayon.
Inyong napakinggan ang ulat ni Albert Kawile mula sa Agoo. Dadakuin naman natin ang rehiyon ng Kabisayaan, Department of Trade and Industry o DTI at Overseas Workers Welfare Administration o OWA nagsagawa ng entrepreneurial mindsetting para sa mga repatriated overseas Filipino workers o OFW sa Eastern Samar. Ang detalye ihahatid sa atin ni Penelope Pomida mula sa Borongan.
Nagdumarang Department of Trade and Industry Eastern Samar Piraagya Negosyo Center, Borongan City, upod ang Overseas Workers Welfare Administration kon OWA in entrepreneurial mindsetting para overseas Filipino workers ha opisina ng DTI ha Borongan City. Napulo nga repatriated OFWs di ka nga magkaiba-iba nga bungtuan Eastern Samar ang nakiisa entrepreneurship development training nga nakasentro paghurma han entrepreneurial mindset. Bahinhinihan Balik Pinas, Balik Hanap Buhay program OWA nga nagahatag in livelihood assistance ngan reintegration support sa mga nagbabalik nga OFW samtang naga-adjust hira pagbalik ka ira komunidad. Siyamhan mga partisipante in kababayan nga nasaing lalaki. Ang tanan ginbuligan kung potensyal nga micro, small and medium enterprises MSMEs ngan lima ira ang ginkilala nga sakupan prioridad nga industrihan agribusiness. Ang training nakasentro pagpalangbuhan entrepreneurial mindset, opportunity seeking, financial discipline ngan batakan nga konsepto ha negosyo nga kinahanglan ha pagtikang han pagpadayon hinguti ay nga negosyo. Ginaghatliwat ang mga partisipante nga magsusihin kaangayan nga oportunidad ha negosyo nga halukal nga rekurso ngan panginginahanglan han merkado labi na sektor han agribusiness. Pinagi ni nga kolaborasyon ginpabaskeg han DTI ngan OWA an ira paning kamot ha pag-empower han mga nagbabalik nga OFW pinagin paghatag ha iran hibabruan ngan skills training base maipahiuli ngan mapauswag an ira pakabuhi. Ginaghatan mga repatriated OFW nga kareyag mag-avail in livelihood ngan reintegration assistance nga makigsumpayan ha OWA para haigo nga giya ngan suporta ha programa. Tikang Didia Syudad han Borongan inihi Penelope Pumida para Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Balita mula sa lalawigan sa bawat rehiyon ng ating bayan. Dito sa Ang Pilipinas Ngayon.
Inyong napakinggan ang ulat ni Penelope Pomida mula sa Borongan. Dumako naman tayo sa Sogod. International Organization for Migration nagbigay ng mga family kit at solar lamp sa St. Bernard, Southern Leyte. Ang kabang ulat ihahatid naman sa atin ni Ria Mikate.
Mihatag og family kit ug solar lamp ang International Organization for Migration kun IOM gagipoduhan sa United Kingdom government ang mga pamilya apektado sa bagyong Tino sa lungsod sa St. Bernard, Southern Leyte. Nasayran sa Radyo Pilipinas, pinaagi kang Municipal Mayor Jocelyn Bongcaraz nga naa sa 120 ka panimalay sa Barangay Dimbas ang nakadawat daog family kits. Gilangkuban ang inabang sa banig, habol unlang thermos, kettle, plato, kutsara ug tinidor. Nansik pa nagipnang solar lamp aron magamit sa panahon sa kagabion. Gawas niya nagipasabot ni Bongcaraz nga nagahinusab ang IOM og cash for shelter assistance nga nagkatidad og 5,500 pesos matag household shelter fixing kits o mga tangke sa tubig alang sa upat ka benepisyaryong barangay. Kalabot ini nagpasalamat ang lokal nga pagamahanan sa padayon nga suporta sa IOM ug sa UK government silang pagtabang sa mga apektadong komunidad. Balita gikan sa Radyo Pilipinas Sugod. Kini si Ria Mikati para sa Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Balita mula sa lalawigan sa bawat rehiyon ng ating bayan. Dito sa Ang Pilipinas Ngayon.
Inyong napakinggan ang ulat ni Ria Mikate mula sa Sogod. Puntahan naman natin ang rehiyon ng Mindanao, palaruan ng mga bata na makatutulong upang sila ay matuto at maging malikhain bukas na. Ang kabuang ulat ihahatid naman sa atin ni Kokoy Medina mula sa Cagayan de Oro.
Bukas na sa publiko ang Unity Kiddie Corner sa Kapitolyo Provincial sa Misamis Oriental. Din mismo si Governor Juliet Oy ang nangulo sa pagbukas niini. Tumong sa pagtukod sa mga pasilidad nga makatun ang mga kabataan o mahilayo sila sa pagkaadik sa mga gadgets, pinaagi sa pagdula sa parke. Usa sa gihatagan o pagtagad sa panggamhanang probinsyal sa Misamis Oriental ang pag-atimaan sa mga kayuhan sa mga kabataan, pinaagi sa paghatag o espasyo kanila aron sila makahimo sa pagpaugnat sa ilang kusog o mahilayo sa mga pagkaadik sa gadgets. Ang Unity Kiddie Corner gilahuman nga mamahimong usa ka lugar diin kapalig-on sa relasyon tali sa mga ginikanan ug mga kabataan o maghatag og dugang kahigayunan nga makahugoy-hugoy sila sa ubang mga kabataan ug mas mulambo pa ang ilahang pagsalig sa ilahang kaugalingon o makakita sila og dugang nila nga mga higala. Gikan dinhi sa dakbayan sa Cagayan de Oro, Kokoy Medina para sa Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Balita mula sa lalawigan sa bawat rehiyon ng ating bayan. Dito sa Ang Pilipinas Ngayon.
Inyong napakinggan ang ulat ni Kokoy Medina mula sa Cagayan de Oro. Dadako naman tayo sa Zamboanga. Zamboanga City Police Office nagsagawa ng Ramadan Symposium para sa mga kapulisang Muslim ng tanggapan. Ang detalye ihahatid sa atin ni Justin Bulanon.
Yakundusi al Zamboanga City Police Office Ramadan Symposium para ng mga Pulisya Muslim del Menciono Oficina a parte del celebración de Ramadan este año. Objeto de la iniciativa hace más moferza el fe del magaya participa en actividad y informa si kilaya de importante el Ramadan. Ya serví como resource speaker en actividad si Ustaz Adam Kanjairi donde ya diskuti ele acerca el mga importante eleksyon este mes de Ramadan. Asigun con ele, hindi lang este obligasyon na relihiyon, tiempo tamen este para hacer bonamente el cuerpo, pasensya y compasyon. Ya diskuti durante el sesyon acerca el mga importansya del ayuno, rezo, caridad, disiplina na cuerpo y buen cambio. Por medio de inisiativa, continúa el soporte del CCPO na progreso espiritual del mga pulisya, mientras sa adverti el unidad y respeto na organisasyon. Desde ang siyudad de Zamboanga, este si Justin Bulanon para na Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Balita mula sa lalawigan sa bawat rehiyon ng ating bayan. Dito sa Ang Pilipinas Ngayon.
Inyong napakinggan ang ulat ni Justin Bulanon mula sa Zamboanga. Pupunta naman tayo sa Iligan. 2 senador dumalaw sa Iligan matapos ang pananalasa ng Bagyong Basyang. Ang kabong ulat ihahatid sa atin ni Alwidad Bashir.
Nagkasunod og bisita si Lawin Gatchalian ug Jinggoy Estrada sa Iligan City aron personal nga masusi ang kahimtang sa mga residente nga naapektuhan sa pag-agi sa Bagyong Basyang. Sa ilang paglibot, nakita mismo sa duha ka senador ang halapad nga kadaot ug pagbaha nga nahabilin sa bagyo. Samtang padayon pa ang clearing operation sa pipila ka lugar sa sulod sa syudad. Daghang pamilya ang nagpabiling nanginahanglan og dinali ang tabang og suporta. Nagpahatag usab og relief goods ang mga senador ngadto sa mga apektado og misaad sa ilang padayong nga pag-igusa alang sa rehabilitasyon og pagbangon sa Iligan. Sumala kanila, magpadayon sila sa pakipagkoordinar sa lokal nga mga opisyal aron mapaspas ang paghatag og ayuda og pagpatuman sa mga programang gikinanglan sa mga apektadong komunidad. Samtang naglaom ang mga residente nga mabisita, usab sila sa ubang mga opisyal sa gobyerno. Ilabi na ni President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. aron mas papalikon pa ang suporta sa nagsudnong panggahamhanan alang sa hinigpit nga pagbangon sa syudad. Gikan sa Dakbayan sa Iligan, ako si Alwidad Bashir para sa Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Balita mula sa lalawigan sa bawat rehiyon ng ating bayan. Dito sa Ang Pilipinas Ngayon.
Samantala, sa puntong ito ay atin na pong bibigyang daan ang presidential event sa oras na ito kung saan ang ating Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. ay nakikilahok ngayon sa isang fireside chat na pinamagatang Tapping the Philippines Dynamic Growth Story. Nabahagi po yan ng Association of Southeast Asian Nations o ASEAN Editors and Economic Opinion Leaders Forum sa Fairmont Hotel sa Makati City. Narito na po si Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Mula sa Presidential Communications Office at Radyo Pilipinas, ito ang Presidential Live Event. Presidential Live Event.
Mr. President, how are you feeling today?
Oh, much better than I was maybe a couple of weeks ago.
We are glad that you're in good health.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you so much for spending time with us and talking about the Philippine dynamic growth story.
Well, it has certainly been an exciting time for the Philippines in many senses because we have really approached the entire system of governance, especially as it pertains to the economy, by making serious structural changes in the way that we do business. And of course, like any large change that is being attempted, it is not an easy thing to do. The bureaucracy is a very, I think I characterize it as being akin to one of these very large tankers, where you turn the wheel and it takes, 10 kilometers for it to actually start moving. And my experience has been a government bureaucracy is very much like that. And so it's much of the frustration comes from an impatience Can we not move this faster? Can we not move this? Can we not get this done much more quickly? And so that is part of the structural changes that we're talking about. The structural changes that we are trying to make in terms of the way government works, but also in being able to respond more quickly to that wheel. When we turn the wheel, let's just say we have decided to change direction or take on a new policy, how to be able to adjust much more quickly than we are able to adjust now. So it's a very interesting problem. It's a difficult problem, but it's an important thing that we have to do, and I think we are beginning to be met with some success.
And Mr. President, when you're turning that wheel, some say it's power steering. It's perspiration steering.
Yeah, well,
are we now moving more towards power steering?
I should hope
faster
so.
reforms.
I hope so. I think that that is certainly one of the aims of what we are trying to do. We have we view the global economy in very many ways. In that there is a great deal of volatility, as we have seen in the past years, and in fact we had hoped that after COVID that things would calm down and that we would set directions and we would slowly just move in those or not so slowly, quickly move down that road that we have set for ourselves. However, the shocks have come in and unexpected, not only in the economic world, but also in the political world, the geopolitical world. And I remember very early on in the administration, I would always describe the geopolitical situation in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, in the South China Sea, as the most complicated geopolitical situation in the world. Boy, was I wrong. That changed very, very quickly. And so now we are surrounded by these geopolitical upheavals. And so there is one of the main things that we are striving for is to provide stability and to be able to say that whatever shocks, we should learn from our COVID experiences. We should also learn from the experiences that we are now presently going through to be able to say that we are more robust, and no matter what happens, that we are able to be resilient and we are able to adjust. And that is what we are trying to do. So there is an element of stability and robustness. And however, as I have just explained, the world has brought upon us many changes.
Yeah.
So there's also a need to be agile. So that is the balance that we have to find.
So, Mr. President, how are you providing this stability for the Philippine economy?
For the Philippine economy, what we have tried to do, of course, is that, in my view, one of the most important elements of that, well, political stability, of course, is at the very heart of it. But more than that is we have to change the ways that we do business. Now, we have been talking about the global economy for a very long time now. And certainly, it is very much the case. But we in the Philippines have really been dependent on traditional or established markets, investors, and that has had to change. And the change is that we then go to, first, we do business in a different way in the world today. So must the Philippines, and those are the changes that we are trying to do. Secondly, we need to go out into the world a great deal more. For example, what I describe it as that we have to engage non-traditional suppliers, non-traditional investors to be part of the Philippine economy. And when I say non-traditional, what I mean by non-traditional is non-traditional to the Philippines. The countries that we have not really traded with before, areas, regions that we have not really engaged before. And sometimes the reason that we haven't done that is simply because of physical distance. We are now talking a great deal more to the EU, but as a trading bloc. But also we are doing a lot bilaterally with the different countries that are EU members. Latin America also presents a great opportunity, and we are trying to engage as well, considering that there is such great commonality between the Philippines and the Latin American countries. I often describe the Philippines as the only Latin country in Asia, and I think that is to our benefit, and we should take advantage of that, and we should build on that. So there are Canada is now become one of our strongest partners. France will be one of our strongest partners, I believe. So these are non-traditional for the Philippines in terms of trade, and that we have to engage that. And that goes over as well into the question of stability. And when we talk about commerce, trade, what the businessmen, what investors are looking for is stability and vision. You need stability so that, and you have to have a vision, you have to have a plan, you have to have a goal. And that can be that is recognizable to prospective businesses, that they see, okay, this is what the Philippines wants to do. And these are the things that the Philippines is doing to try to achieve that goal. We should be part of that. And that is the kind of, that is the way that we are trying to make the Philippines, that we are making, it is succeeding, that we are making the Philippines a more investor-friendly and more investor-attractive country.
You talk about investor-friendly, you talk about political and economic stability. When I talk to foreign investors, Mr. President, they're always telling me about the ease of doing business.
Yes.
The number, not dozens, but the hundreds of signatures that you need to be able to get, let's say, things done.
Yep.
Right? They say it's about 200 to 300 signatures, while in Singapore, it only takes 1 to 2 days to sign up. I lived in Singapore for many years. And then in Thailand, it takes about 2 months. In Vietnam, how can we align the ease of doing business with our ASEAN neighbors?
Singapore is just a touch smaller than the Philippines. So maybe in that sense there is a... But of course that is a perfectly valid statement. That's a perfectly valid insight. And it really, the bureaucracy, that's why I mentioned the bureaucracy earlier, has been one of the main, shall we say, roadblocks to quicker processing and simple things. Things like we were in a meeting the other day. The things like getting a copy of your birth certificate.
Yes.
And we went through the process of saying how does it go and how long does it take, and it takes a month, maybe a month and a half. Why would it take a month and a half? Because again, you have to go through this entire process, which is very slow. And it's still done by hand. The files are still in handwritten form. And so that's why we are trying to fix that, and we are minimizing now the necessary contact between the citizen and the government for anything that they do. And we are relying very much on the new technologies, on the internet. Because we are 7,600 plus islands. And it is too much to ask for somebody who is living on a relatively isolated island to find a way to go to the regional center, go to the government office there, and get the documents that they have. But we have this advantage, we have this technology, we have this, which is for the Philippines, for a country like the Philippines, which as I said is a very large archipelago. I think we are the second most islands in the world, only following Indonesia. And for us, that is a godsend. And we fully intend to make full use and maximize the use of those technologies. And we now have what we call the eGov app, which is an application which allows you over the internet to get in touch with different government agencies, and in that way do your business online. And you know, we are our for example, our personal identification, our IDs. 70% now? Is it 70% of our personal IDs are now digital? And that's something that you can get immediately just by filling out the form. The remaining 30% is those people who still insist on having a physical ID. And that's that kind of sort of thinking, I guess, will eventually change. It's a generational thing, it really is. And you still pull your wallet out and want to show your ID. But now, the younger generation well, from millennials onwards, are finding it much easier to adapt to that and prefer it. And so these are the kinds of things that we are trying to do. On the ease of doing business, again, it's the bureaucracy that gets in the way. And the necessity for having all these forms. You know, you wait in line for 2 hours, 3 hours. You know, this is your day is gone. You wait for 2-3 hours, you get one signature, and you say, thank you. And they say, okay, now you have to go to the other office, which is across town. And then with our wonderful traffic, you know, that takes another hour and a half. It is across town to get another signature, and you get another signature and another signature. For example, to register a new corporation, we looked it up, and the number of signatures or forms that you have to fill up are just ridiculous, are crazy. Our model is Singapore, because in Singapore, all you have, I think it's 2 or 3 documents that you have to go through, and they're all one office next to the other. And that's Vietnam, the same thing. And that's why they've become so successful. Vietnam, I know businessmen who opened businesses in Vietnam from the Philippines, Filipinos who have gone to Vietnam, and they say, you know, we had just dinner with the minister, and the next day we woke up, all the papers were there, we just had to sign, we signed them, we came home, finished. And that's what we are aspiring to do. And that's what, but there is much to unravel, and there is much to undo. Much of the problem comes from, shall we say, a tendency by our legislators to have knee-jerk reactions to things. So when a problem arises, they immediately say, okay, we'll put another level of tests, of checks and balances. And sometimes the checks and balances are lying on top of one another, and they are often, in fact, contradictory. And that is, and now the bureaucrat, the civil servant, is hesitant to actually just go and just do it and get it done, because if you really look hard enough, you will find that they have violated something somewhere, some little rule that nobody really pays any attention to, that has no use whatsoever, that has never been invoked, but they are worried. And so this kind of attitude, this kind of atmosphere needs to change. That the best way is the quickest way and the most efficient way. It is not the way that will avoid any trouble, because we will not, that is not what government is about. We're not here to find fault. If, for example, you make a mistake, I'm not going to file an administrative case against you. I'm going to go there and help you and say, why was this a problem? And what can we do to make it better? And that's what we are trying to do with government. And I think in the 10 kilometers that we're waiting, maybe we're about kilometer 8 now. So we're moving, but it's coming along, but much more slowly than we would like for it to be.
Definitely. We would like it much faster to attract new foreign investors into the country. Is this red tape, Mr. President, and this bureaucracy also the cause of why we have fallen even below Vietnam in terms of attracting FDIs? In 2024 alone, there was $230 billion worth of investments in ASEAN. And in the Philippines, we just attracted $10 billion.
Yes.
Is it because of the red tape? Is it the bureaucracy? Because when there's a bureaucracy and things are not digitalized, right, Mr. President, things fall through the cracks.
Yes.
It's all about corruption.
And there's that too. That doesn't help. We have developed a very strange system in the Philippines where you have fixers.
Yes.
Where instead of waiting for 2 to 3 hours in line, and going from one office to another and wasting 3 days of your life trying to get this simple permit, to open a business or some such thing. They have somebody who will sidle up to you and say, you give me X amount and I'll fix it. And they're in cahoots with the bureaucrat, with the civil servant. They say, okay, then they'll go there and they say, come on, you rush this one. They rush it, they pay their money, they split the money between the fixer and the guy at the desk. And that's what we want to completely remove. And again, digitalization is going to be the key for us because we are trying to remove in these processes, we are trying to remove as much discretion on the civil servant as possible. For 2 reasons. Number 1, of course, it will make things quicker, it will make things easier. Number 2, it will remove that fear from civil servants that they made a mistake, an honest mistake. And so they're no longer as hesitant because we didn't say yes or no at any point. We just processed the piece of paper and we did exactly as the rules say, or no physical contact, no person-to-person contact at all. And people will fill out the form or fill out the forms necessary. We minimize as well those forms. And they will get it is what they want, a business permit, a license, whatever it is that they need from government. And it needn't be a hard copy, a piece of paper. It can be in their computer that if they choose to, they can print out, or they keep it on their phone and just, as many people have been doing already, just present it wherever it's needed.
So, Mr. President, can we expect full digitalization of government services by the end of your term?
Full digitalization?
Yes.
Certain agencies, certainly. We have prioritized, especially in the health sector. That's been the number 1 priority because that has been, what happens is that when you ask for assistance from government, the assistance is forthcoming, but the process takes so long that it becomes too late. And the person that's waiting for it died already, or it just didn't bother anymore, or sometimes just didn't bother going anymore, and just got sick and tried to get well at home, and that's a tragedy. So health systems are number 1. The in government functions, all of these things like simple permits, IDs, the renewing driver's licenses. And even on a larger scale, for the big corporations, the forms that are required to put up a corporation, to enter into a contract with the government or with another commercial entity, all of these things, we look to digitalization to help. And that goes right back to the ease of doing business and make it easier for people to come. And should they decide to invest in the Philippines, then make it easy for them. Now, the other part of the answer to your question about why we, in terms of FDI, we have fallen behind, is also because what the other element of this that I said was vision. We haven't really given a roadmap to our prospective investors about what the Philippines wants to do. Where are the areas? Do you want to go into electric vehicle manufacturing? Do you want to go into mining? Do you want to go into batteries? Do you want to, what is it that the Philippines is going to spend money on? Where is the public expenditure going and why there? And once you are making that clear to investors, there will be investors who will say, we should be part of that. We'll make money doing that in the Philippines. And then coupled, hopefully, with an ease of doing business, then that will make us more attractive to all our different partners and trade partners around the world.
I think, Mr. President, for many investors who are also here in this room, what they really want is the sustainability of policies from one administration to another, because there is no consistency.
Yes.
One administration imposes this type of policies, your administration. And you have done a lot, Mr. President, in terms of the green lanes, the Create More Act. You've done a lot for to be able to make foreign investors come into the country. But you have basically 2 years left. So it is important that the next administration follows what you've already started.
And that is why we have to be very, very, that people have to understand very, very well what it is that we are trying to do and what the benefits of what we are trying to do is. We've entered now into an entirely different arena. But the political stability is certainly something that is very, very important. There maybe less now, but of course in our history, there has been that element of small town politics, where it really from, you're in a little town, you are running to be mayor, and you're campaigning against, let's say, the incumbent or whoever, the incumbent. And you're criticizing the incumbent and saying, what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing, they're this, they're that, they're that, they're that. And they win. And therefore, by necessity, then they have to say everything my opponent did was wrong. So all their projects stop. I have a better idea. I have a better. It's halfway done. The schoolroom is halfway done. All you have to do is put a roof on it. Why don't you just do that? Then we'll have a new schoolhouse. But no, and that has filtered up to even at the national level, where whoever went before me, who I opposed, and the presidents only get one term. So you will always be opposing the incumbent. So you have to show that everything that this person did in the past was wrong. And that you criticize and criticize and criticize. The wonderful thing about being in the opposition is you don't actually have to get anything to work. All you have to do is criticize. All you have to do is pull your opponent down. And that's the problem that we face. We have to really educate people into what we are trying to do. I'm not here I'm not president, to show off or to whatever, to help certain parts of the economy or friends or relatives. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to do these structural changes so that the Philippines becomes more investment friendly. And we are starting to feel the effects of that, the beneficial effects of that. And then you are able to say, do you want to stop those beneficial things? Because if we do not elect a like-minded president in 2028, all of these will just go by the wayside. Now, one of the things we have tried to do to make those systems more robust is to make them as widespread as possible, number one. And then I'm talking about things like education, healthcare, social benefits. Make them so widespread that people immediately feel the benefits, and therefore they will refuse to allow any future leader to stop those beneficial effects. However, when it comes to the economy, that is much more difficult. Because how many economists are there? There's less than 0.01% of the populace are actual economists who look at numbers, who look at the inflation rate, who look at the core inflation, the inflation coming from food products, the inflation coming from fuel, and try to analyze GDP growth, the ratio between debt and the GDP, all of these things. Who looks at that? No one. Very few people, maybe us, people in this room. Those are the people that look at it. So it's harder to explain. And the only way really to, shall we say, sell your policies is to make people feel the effects of those policies. And that is the short of changing the electoral system. But I think those of you who live here in the Philippines have seen the difficulties that arise when the Constitution is being questioned and that there are suggestions to amend the Constitution. And so these are the difficulties that we find. But as long as we are able to show that these policies and these measures that we have undertaken are of benefit. And we can, then people will say, well, if I feel the benefit, my life is just that much better because of these things, then I want to keep it. And that's the best way that you can do that. The other way that we've tried to do it is to enshrine them in law. And that's much more difficult to change. So some of these policies are enshrined. Create More is the one that you mentioned. Create More is the amendment that we have to the old CREATE Act, which is which was an act which was to provide incentives for investors, both on the plus side, incentives in actual tax breaks and things like that, and in sanctions for people who do not follow the rules. And we have actually, we enlarged it. That's why it has now become, come to be called the Create More, because there are now more incentives, because there are industries that didn't exist when that law was written, that now are very, very attractive. And I think everyone understands they mostly belong in the digital world, but then there's also mining, which is a traditional industry in the Philippines, which we have not taken full advantage of. And that will provide a better, but it's a mix actually of incentives, and also the other element of it is to ease of doing business. The law also circumscribes certain areas where, like you say, there's a green lane where we can get around the bureaucracy. There's a workaround on the bureaucracy. We specify certain areas where we are particularly interested, and we make it easier for investors to go into those areas. Agriculture, again, education, healthcare, mining, and many others. Actually, I made some notes here. There's a very long list, and I don't want to give you an incomplete list, but there is a great deal that we have identified. We have identified, I think, about 19 areas that are going to be the priority, and those priorities will be the ones that we will assist in every way that government can, and not only government. One of the main changes that we have made is to recognize and to immediately say, day one that I came into office, I said, we recognize the private sector as a full and important partner in economic development. Government does many things, but private sector does other things much better than government. Once you recognize that and you engage them, then it becomes much easier. As a matter of fact, there's a lot here, so you have to stop me from talking. Yeah.
Mr. President, I hope you don't mind if I interject,
no,
right?
Please do. You don't get me started. We'll be here all day.
Okay, you talk about structural changes. You've made quite a number of them during the past 4 years of your administration, economic and reform policies. So what we need right now is consistency, that the next president, the next leaders of our country continue what you've already started. So what kind of leader, who should we vote for in 2028 who will continue what you've already started? Maybe you can give us a hint, Mr. President.
Well, number one, somebody who understands economics.
Because understands economics.
That's the first thing. That's the life of the person, who understands how to create jobs, who understands how to keep the inflation rate down, who understands how to make food supply a given, something that you can assume. So, and someone who thinks about productivity, because growth is about productivity. How do you make your working population more productive? How do you support them so they work better? How do you fix the education system so they're better trained? How do you make sure that they're healthier? How do you make sure that they don't worry about food? Those are the kind of people that you need, that we need, are the people who actually are thinking about not politics, but how to make the country better. I've always said very early on, again, and even before I became president, I always was watching, and I said, when I was walking around and being around my father, all we would hear is, we are building a nation. We are about nation building. I didn't hear that anymore. So we need to have nation builders, people who want to make the Philippines better, people who actually love the Philippines and love Filipinos and want to make things better. And it boils down to, it might sound a little sentimental or emotional, but that's what you need. And of course, there has to be the element of competency. You know, the love is goes a long way, but it's not enough. You also have to know how to do it. You have to have some training, or at the very least, you have to listen to people who have that training. And I'm proud to say we have in government, we have a thing called the Private Sector Advisory Council. And the Private Sector Advisory Council, we meet more or less once a week. And the businessmen who are here know that, because we see each other fairly often. And they sit down, and we divide it up into different elements, to education, to healthcare, jobs, technology, etc., etc. And we get the best of them, and they sit down, and we basically, government just sits there and listens and asks them, what is it you need from us? That's how it started. Now, government, on this side of the table, they come in and they say, have you done your homework? You know, we talked the last week, or the last meeting that we had, we were saying that we are going to do this. Have you done it? Or haven't you? And why haven't you? And what's the problem? And it's a very, how do you say, there's a great synergy that comes from that. And it's not to blame and say you're messing up, you know, you're bad, you're doing the, etc. You're not smart enough. It's not about that. It's about getting together and say, okay, this worked. Let's do that more. This worked. Okay, how do we make it better? This just didn't work. And then you have to decide, well, maybe it was just a bad idea, so let's do something else. Let's not waste our time. Or we have to do it, it's too important, we have to fix that problem. And that has been so helpful in giving us direction on how government should work, because what we are trying to attract is business. Of course, there's the social side to government, but a big side, we cannot afford the social side if we're not doing well on the business side, on the commercial, on the private, on the revenue side. Let's just put it that way. There are two sides to every balance sheet, so we have to do well on both sides, and that's what the PISAC, what we can call it the PISAC, has become a very important part of. But it all derives, it all filters down, distills from that very clear understanding that the private sector needs to be a full partner in economic development.
So, Mr. President, this will just be a very short answer that I'm expecting from you.
Okay.
So, with the characteristics that you've mentioned on who should be the next president in 2028, have you already narrowed it down to about 2 or 3?
You're going to get me into trouble. Well, certainly there.
He's going to answer it.
Of course, I'm
Go
going
ahead.
to answer it. Well, we have some people that we are talking to in mind. Many of them actually, some of them have said, no, I do not
From
want.
the cabinet?
I'm sorry?
Are they from the cabinet? Are they local officials? Are they from the Senate or Congress?
You're just like a last light. You're not
As you can see,
you're not going to
Mr. President, I love your socks.
Yeah.
It's green because we're both from LaSalle. But I'm wearing the flag colors
We're
today.
both schoolmates. But he was much older than I was. He was way ahead. Yes, but of course you have to see, you know, when people are working, but you cannot limit yourself to government.
Yeah.
But of course it's much harder to bring to a presidential level someone who has not been involved in politics ever. It happens, but it's not that easy, especially in the highly political atmosphere that we have here in the Philippines. It's not that they don't like the person, they just know they don't know who they are. And to build that up to a presidential level is quite difficult. So you look at people in government and you see who's doing well, who is exceptional. And I'm glad to say, exceptional people in government.
And you will endorse this person very soon?
Not soon. Not soon. Timing is everything, Rico.
Okay. We should be talking about ASEAN and the Philippine economy, not about politics. So, okay, Mr. President, I mean, you've already instituted a lot of these economic reforms. I mean, we've seen the economy grow from 2022 up until 2025. Unfortunately, we saw a setback no, in the third quarter where we saw the economy expand by just 3.9%,
right.
and in the fourth quarter by 3%. Is this a concern for you? And of course, this was also impacted by infrastructure spending because of the flood control anomalies.
Yeah. The flood control problem, scandal, whatever you want to call it, has certainly played a very large part in that. And unfortunately, it had to be done. It is one of those things where you just had to rip the Band-Aid off. There was no easy way to do it. And otherwise, then the old practices, if it wasn't done, the old practices would continue. And the Philippines would flatline. And that would be, while everyone else is exponential growth, we are flat, and we get nowhere. And so that's why it had to be done. I knew going in that it would be painful, but nothing big and important is not painful. And there are many people who resist just because they are contrarians, and there are people who resist because they are afraid. They say, we cannot change because this is how we've always done it. They're very conservative, and you know you can't fault them for that. But that is what we had to face. However, you must also consider that to no small part, to the economic shocks that came in the last part of last year, the weather, the climate change, what happened in climate, the amount of money that we are spending to try and well, first of all, help the victims of climate change, and to now do the adjustment to climate change, i.e., moving settlements away from the areas that have suffered because of climate change. I remember when I was governor, and I was governor from '98 to 2007. When they said that a storm would come in, we knew what to do. We knew where it was going to flood. We knew what air gaze would be isolated. We knew where to go. We had a very good idea of what was going to happen. That's no longer the case. Even if you look at the patterns of our weather, before it was very clear. It would come into Bicol, Region 5, and would go up and come out of the Ilocos Norte, usually in Region 1, up north. That's no longer the case. Mindanao has always been seen. There are no typhoons in Mindanao. Now there are. Maybe one or two only a year, but there are typhoons in Mindanao. And so that has been a really, and it impacts us in many ways. Not only in the fact that, you know, you can imagine how heartbreaking it is for someone who has worked very hard to build this bypass road, a 5-kilometer bypass road, and 6 months later it's completely destroyed because the storm came in and destroyed it. And you were sure that we built this road in the right place because typhoons never passed there. And it did, and it destroyed the road. And that's the kind of thing that we have to be dealing with. So we have to be much smarter about the way we do things. But that has been an impact as well. Then the war in Ukraine has had an element. And when Russia first entered the Ukraine, the initial reaction was, well, you know, it shouldn't affect us because we're very far away. But of course, we import wheat from both Russia and Ukraine. So the prices of food went up like this, and we had to find alternative sources to, and of course, it was a seller's market because the supply coming out of those two countries was quite large. So it's a seller's market. You had to pay a higher price, and you had those effects. Again, and then Gaza. You would think, well, they're not oil-producing countries, so it shouldn't really bother our fuel prices, but it did anyway, because there were threats to the Straits of Hormuz, the tankers were hesitant to go in, that sort of thing, so it still became. So it's uncertainty that we are fighting with. Uncertainty about climate change, uncertainty about supply chains, uncertainty about geopolitical concerns, about war, about peace. It's uncertainty that we are trying to mitigate. And we do that by, I suppose, like anything, like broadening our base, i.e., again, talking to what we have come to describe as non-traditional trade partners, so that the economy is much less prone to shifts and shocks that come from the outside over which we have no control.
It is indeed a confluence of factors, both internationally and locally, that has impacted the Philippines' GDP growth in the second half of next year. I was talking to some businessmen here, Mr. President. One was a foreign investor, and he said, my concern is about the ease of doing business.
Yes.
And that you have answered. And a local businessman that I spoke to here told me, I'm concerned about who's going to be jailed next.
Yeah. That's perfectly...
Will there be more people behind bars?
That's,
because we've been waiting for this, Mr. President, since last year.
I don't think that putting people behind bars. Of course, we put people who have been shown to have who have abused their privilege, their authorities, and have taken money that does not belong to them, or belongs to the people, behind bars. But the system needs to change, and
the culture.
That is why we had to do that. I always say, why is it that Filipinos, when they are abroad, do so well? Because the rules are clear. You go, you work hard, you get a little lucky, you'll be fine. I'll tell you one of the stories that has stuck in my mind. I was driving along Camp John Hay when it was still under American administration. I was literally driving along here. In front of me was a car with a guy who was eating a hamburger. Okay, and he finished eating his hamburger, and he rolled up the trash, and he put his hand outside the window. He didn't let go of the trash until he left the gate of John Hay.
At inyo pong napakinggan ang ilalaman po sa bahagi ng pakikilahok ni Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. sa ASEAN Editors and Economic Leaders Forum. Patuloy na lamang po ninyong pakinggan ang kabuuan ng naturang kaganapan sa pamagitan po ng ating Evox PBS Receiver app para sa ating audio live streaming. Ako po muli ang inyong lingkod, Steph Vicente. Isang mapagpalang araw po sa ating lahat.
At yan ang Pilipinas ngayon. Muling samahan sa parehong oras at alamin ang pinakahuling mga kaganapan at balita saan man kayo naroon. Ang Pilipinas ngayon.